register for a meeting, and then completely forget about it, missing out on the opportunity to share at the time of the experience. So again, to those persons who have joined using the reminder sent by Saskia MacDonald this morning, you may inadvertently be presented in this meeting or be presented in this meeting as Saskia MacDonald. And so we have quite a few. We ask you to go to the appropriate space and to rename yourselves with your own name that I'm sure that you are proud to hold. So welcome this morning to our Information Hotspot, another in the series of our Information Hotspot sessions. The Bureau of Standards Jamaica, we have been having these over the last year and a half as we sought to find a way to present information, and in the face of COVID and the restrictions, we were not able to meet physically, face-to-face. The Information Hotspot session is a part of our public education and awareness campaign. And we thank all of you who are in fact our valuable customers for sharing with us today. Thank you for the energies that you bring, and thank you. Those of you who are involved in food safety, we're hoping that today's session will be beneficial to you all. We remind you of the protocols for participating in these meetings. We ask for the most part that you remain mute unless you come at some point to raise a question, to ask an issue. We ask that you maintain that you keep your mics off. Certainly, if you are able where you are to engage with video, we welcome that. But we ask that if your background is busy, that you will minimize the use of the video or your camera. Sorry, the camera at that point. At the point near to the end, when we will facilitate questions, because questions will not be facilitated during the general session based on how the program has been set up, we ask that you take notes of whatever points come up, just jot them down, and then at that point at which we can facilitate some discussion with you, we will take that. We are approaching 9:40, it's now 9:39, and I'm seeing a few more persons still with the name Saskia MacDonald. I think we are seeing two. I expect only to see one. And so I'm going to ask the person who is not Saskia MacDonald, but if you check, you see your name as Saskia MacDonald, to change that. It's 9:40. Welcome. Today, we take you on a journey. The scenario presented is not real. It is not real, but it could be. This is one situation, however, that we would never ever want to occur. Food safety is such an important thing, but it is often on the back burner until, unfortunately, there is an outbreak of foodborne illnesses. Today, we at the Bureau of Standards Jamaica want to underscore just how important the issue of food safety is, and to remind you, our food manufacturers, our processors, potential and established exporters of food, that while food safety is everybody's business, you, food processor, you, cottage owner, you have a critical role to play in ensuring that your food product produced for sale is safe. We want to highlight also the role of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica in providing support to you in ensuring the safety of the products. We ask you to take this journey with us as we explore the food safety saga presented to you by the Bureau of Standards Jamaica. What if one day you tuned into your television and heard this? I am Ellis James Sling, and this is a news report from Information Hotspot News Network. Jamaica's food safety regime has come under scrutiny earlier this week with the devastating news of the illness of several persons. And now today we are learning that 5 persons have died as a result of this situation. Persons had been hospitalized earlier this week as scores of persons were demonstrating signs of food poisoning attributed to meals incorporating bacon and ham manufactured by Not Real Meat Incorporated. Even as the National Compliance and Regulatory Authority, NCRA, investigates the products that have been common to all the persons who fell ill, it advised of enforcement actions being undertaken by the NCRA. In the absence of a product recall notice from the manufacturers regarding these items due to potential listeria contamination, the NCRA has issued a notice of withdrawal of sale of the products and has said that conclusive test results will result in condemnation of the items. Meanwhile, the Consumer Affairs Commission is encouraging consumers to check the labels of such products for the batch code ABC123 prior to purchasing or consuming. If consumers have products with the stated code in their possession, they should immediately contact the processors Not Real Meat Incorporated or return the products to their point of purchase for a full refund. The NCRA has said that the inspectors are currently ensuring the removal of these products from supermarkets as well as warehouses to ensure the products are not being sold. Informed sources suggest that this enforcement action taken by the NCRA will cause millions of dollars of losses for the company, which has operated in Jamaica for the last 7 years. Losses are estimated to be even greater because of the approaching Christmas season. As regulators and government officials grapple with this shocking situation, the players in the agro-processing industry are coming under greater scrutiny. The ministers with responsibility for industry and commerce, for agriculture and fisheries, as well as the Minister of Health and Wellness, in a quick response to the occurrences, have called a series of urgent meetings of stakeholders in these sectors. And following on today's major news item, and of course, the reality that over the last few days, persons have been hospitalized, the Information Hotspot News Network explores the matter of food safety, associated issues, and its impact. As we delve into the issue, we will hear from experts in their fields who will share important perspectives. And now we go into the details relating to the news which came to all of us earlier this week. Foodborne illnesses in the United States alone lead to 48 million people falling ill, 128,000 hospitalized, and up to 3,000 people dying annually, according to their Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. Companies lose millions of dollars, face irreparable reputational damage, and often close their operations, leading to significant unemployment in the country. We take a commercial break, and when we return, more.
At the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, we're driving the growth of Jamaican businesses, large and small, developing standards to improve the quality of our products and services. Standards are essential to your business success, which is why Jamaica's brightest scientists, engineers, technicians, and standards development professionals are at work to give you the competitive edge, locally and internationally. We're here to help you meet the quality challenge. So if you're starting a business or expanding to the next level, think quality, think BSJ. Raise your standards and the world will meet you there. Get ready to succeed. The Bureau of Standards Jamaica, making standards work for you.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Ellis James Leng, and this is the Information Hotspot News Network. As we continue to examine the issue of food safety, the IHSNN news team caught up with the Rajiv Brooks of the BSJ's microbiology laboratory. Warning, some images that you are about to see are graphic. Viewer discretion is encouraged. Please indicate your name and your position at the Bureau of Standards Jamaica.
All right, thanks for having me. I am Rajiv Brooks, analyst within the microbiology branch at the Bureau of Standards.
Mr. Brooks, we are looking at issues relating to food safety. Right. You have shared with us some images of insects, rodents, stuff that you have picked up in your tests. Please tell us about some of these images that we are showing to our viewers.
All right, so in essence, these images depicts what we refer as extraneous matter, and in a simpler term, just contaminants that we have come across from food samples. It varies from as simple as insect legs, wings, whole body of ants. For a particular instance, we had gotten possible ID or identification of lizard embryo from a sample that was received within the branch.
When you receive these things, what does it say or what does it suggest about food processing within some entities?
All right, so the fact that we're picking these contaminants up in food samples speaks to the fact that there might be some amount of breakdown in just your basic good manufacturing practices. It could be that there is a good system within manufacturing plants and stuff like that, but some breakdown possibly at the point of storage, at the point of transport, or just having to do with the retailers who sell products for these manufacturers. It's important that food safety is observed from the farm to the table, because you might have a good system at the point where you select your suppliers of raw material. You might have a good system within your manufacturing plant, but then when it comes to transport and it comes to storage or the retailers who sell your products, if you have a breakdown anywhere at that point, you might have contaminants like what you're seeing getting into your product.
But these contaminants could also be at the point of manufacture.
Yes, they could be.
As you would have seen, Mr. Brooks gave us a sense of some of these extraneous matters detected in products presented at the microbiology laboratory of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica. The representative, Mr. Brooks, also spoke about tests which are available from the BSJ to help businesses ensure safety of their food products. What are the tests that you actually conduct at the Bureau of Standards Jamaica? And how do these tests help keep us safe?
All right, so the microbiology branch provides technical services to manufacturers as well as the individuals who do some amount of what we refer to as cottage industry operation. We provide on microbiological, in the sense we test for pathogens like your listeria, your salmonella, things like that, as well as we do what we call extraneous matter testing. Now, this type of test is usually what picks up things like your insect legs, glass particles, strings, and other things like that in food products. So,
And when you pick these up, does it suggest that these items are not suitable for sale?
all right. So, depending on the food product and depending on existing standards, so there are a lot of existing standards locally as well as internationally. So when we get a product to test, the first thing that's usually determined is the market for which this product is intended. Then we would determine the particular standards to apply to the product. So it varies depending on the product and depending on where it's being marketed. Otherwise, we just use a general thing. So if we get something like, let's say, bread, that food product is categorized as a ready to eat because you're literally just taking it from the packaging and consuming it. There's no other processing that happens from the package of the bread before you eat it. So that would be considered as like a ready to eat. Locally, we have a ready to eat standard. So especially if it's for the local market, the ready to eat standard would be applied depending on the requirements. So if the ready to eat standards say ready to eat food like your bread or bottled drinks should not have extraneous matter, even if it is that we find one, the mere fact that it says it should not have or shall not have, then that would be an issue, and essentially that product would not be in compliance with the standards.
So I just want you to speak to the impact on cost.
All right, so in terms of cost to the manufacturer, the services that we provide within the microbiology branch is, I would say, very important, because it helps with the whole surveillance program that the manufacturer might have in terms of guaranteeing food safety and quality. You wouldn't want to have a scenario where you send out products on the market that eventually turns out to not be in compliance to the local standards, or you would want to be exporting $1 million worth of container shipment overseas and your product not in compliance with the standards that's required by that particular market. A recall can be very expensive to do, and at the end of the day, that's just a financial loss that companies usually try not to incur.
Right. Thank you for that. You mentioned some pathogens that you seek to identify as you conduct these tests. You mentioned Listeria,
Right.
Salmonella. Are there others? And are these likely to harm people in major ways?
All right.
And in what ways is it likely manifest itself?
All right. So in addition to the extraneous matter contaminants which would have been displayed, we also do testing for, as I mentioned earlier, pathogens. So like your salmon.
And what are pathogens? Explain pathogens
Okay.
for my audience.
So pathogens, a simple definition would be organisms that can cause ill health or bad health, from as simple as diarrhea, your vomiting, your fever, to as severe as death. So essentially any organism that poses a threat to your health if you're exposed to it can be considered a pathogen. Not all organisms are considered pathogen because usually once you have a good immune system, it's usually able or capable of fending off, but some of these organisms are capable of bypassing a healthy immune system. So usually have these particular organisms within a group considered as pathogens. So now in the lab here, we do testing for pathogens like salmonella, listeria, clostridium, yes, staph or staphylococcus. Um, and the name does, I mean, some of the names are a bit hard sometimes for people to pronounce or even to remember, but just a general grouping, pathogen, is very important to remember in the manufacturing industry.
Of course, in light of the illnesses and the associated deaths that we have just become aware of, the IHNN asked about meat processing and what are the potential effects on some meat products such as bacon and ham as persons prepare for the Christmas season. This is what Mr. Brooks had to say. And as we await the clip to come up, the discussion was very useful. It shed light on lots of issues that very often as consumers we take for granted, and thus the importance of the agro-processor, the food processor, making sure that in his or her facility, every effort is made to ensure the highest quality and greatest diligence to ensure food safety. The information I'm being told by my technical team is coming up, but just to advise that during today's program, as we explore food safety, we will also be hearing from one of the regulators in the market, because across Jamaica, we do have several regulators who are involved in food in the food area. And so we will be hearing from one of the regulating bodies here in Jamaica, the National Compliance and Regulatory Authority, who they have issued the stop order, so to speak, or the ceasing of sale of the item, the withdrawal of sale from the market. We will also hear from the Quality Institute of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, and that agency, we have been told here at Information Hotspot News Network, they provide a range of training opportunities that can help people be ready for the food processing industry. Additionally, we will hear from the National Certification Body of Jamaica. We will hear from the Food Safety Modernization Secretariat, also housed at the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, and we will hear as well from their team that speaks to us about packaging and how packaging, as simple as we, the consumer, see it, we will hear from packaging. We will hear as well about the packaging. And so at this point, we will, rather than look at the meat samples and pathogens, we are going to just listen to a word that came to us from Mr. Brooks as he shared with us and kind of suggested to food processors some things that they needed to take in consideration. We listen up for that clip at this time. What should our food processors, whether at home, doing a little food item, coconut treats, jams, jellies, doing juices, roots wine, what should our food processors know as they seek to come into access your services?
All right, so it's important at any level that you are within the food industry, whether you're a small manufacturer or a large scale manufacturer, that you have a good understanding of the threats that exist within the realm of the food industry in terms of the pathogens. Um, it's important that you not just only have an understanding of the organisms, but the different pathways or points at which they can become a part of your product essentially. Because you might have a scenario where you have what you consider to be a foolproof food safety system in place, whether it's on a small or large scale. But if it's not routinely reviewed or routinely, you know, just doing your random checks for points of weakness or points where something might happen, and you don't need a long period of time for a breakdown within a food safety system for an organism to be introduced. And sometimes when they're introduced within your system, it's hard to get rid of them. And one of them in particular is listeria. If listeria, for instance, listeria gets within your food manufacturing area, sometimes it's very difficult for totally removing them from your processing environment, which can prove challenging for manufacturers, because then it will essentially be constantly showing up within your finished products at the point of testing within, like for our case, in the lab. So to guarantee food safety, it's important that every member within the food manufacturing plant or even your small scale manufacturing at home, that every member treat the particular product that they are producing as if it is something that they themselves would be consuming, or picture it as if it's something that you're making for your baby at home or your grandmother at home. Because if it is that you downplay on the role that you have, no matter the post, no matter what point in the manufacturing system that you are, or even from the raw material point, even if it is that you're on the farm, you might think that your role in guaranteeing food safety is insignificant. It is not. And it's important that everything that you do, you stick to your good manufacturing practices and other guidelines or procedures that governs food safety, to ensure that when the food reaches on your table, it is indeed safe. The microbiology branch, as I mentioned earlier, does provide a very good service for the industry here locally. And not just locally, we also have regional or international companies that when they get their products within the local market, they do use our services. I consider it a very important role. I consider my role as an analyst within the lab to be very important in guaranteeing food safety. Not just guaranteeing food safety, but also helping with the integrity of our overall food system, the companies, things like that, ensuring that at some point tomorrow down the line, we don't have a company getting sued for food safety breaches, and ensuring that, we all live and enjoy our food safely.
Thank you. As we wrap up, Mr. Brooks, the microbiology laboratory of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica is accredited or has several tests accredited. Speak to us about accreditation and what that means for your company and for the persons who utilize your services.
Right. So our service here are indeed accredited, which speaks to the fact that when you send your product or when you engage in business with us to carry out testing services for you, you can be guaranteed or assured that all that we do are done within standardized and internationally recognized procedures and methods. So essentially, any questions or doubts of the results that you get at the end of testing, you can be assured of the credibility of the results you get from the microbiology lab at the Bureau of Standards.
We found the engagement with Mr. Brooks quite informative, and I'm trusting that my technical team will be able to give us that clip that we zeroed in on meats, particularly because of the season we're coming in. But we did recognize one of the important things that was said by Mr. Brooks, and I'm sure that there are several other persons who are likely to be able to speak to the matter of every single individual, no matter where they are on the food chain, from the farmer, the driver, the person who's transporting the material, including the person who thinks I'm just responsible for cleaning the space in which the production takes place. Every single person involved in the food processing industry is important, and every single person needs to treat their job with that kind of level of care and concern for quality. So my technical team is telling me that particular video that we wanted to show, where we were zeroing in on this particular issue regarding the meat, we're having some difficulty with that, but notwithstanding, we proceed with our program, and we end this section as we consider the reminder from Mr. Brooks of the BSJ's accreditation of its microbiology laboratory and what that means for the industry. So we are very assured that they play an important role in testing and ensuring that safe food reaches our table. So we are going to just take a break at this point. We wrap up this segment of the session. When we return, we will hear from other players in the food safety industry.
Boy, ackee tastes good with saltfish, especially when it's safe. The consumption of undeveloped akis may cause vomiting, stomach cramps, dizziness, and diarrhea. Put the health of your consumer first. The Bureau of Standards Jamaica's chemistry laboratory performs hypoglycin A analysis to check the toxin levels in akis. Are your canned akis safe for consumption? The BSJ supports food safety. Call 876-926-3140. The Bureau of Standards Jamaica, making standards work for you. Boy, ackee tastes good with saltfish, especially when it's safe. The consumption of undeveloped akis may cause vomiting, stomach cramps, dizziness, and diarrhea. Put the health of your consumer first. The Bureau of Standards Jamaica's chemistry laboratory performs hypoglycin A analysis to check the toxin levels in akis. Are your canned akis safe for consumption? The BSJ supports food safety. Call 876-926-3140. The Bureau of Standards Jamaica, making standards work for you. Boy.
Thank you. And after that assurance, that word from our sponsors, we continue with our program. And just to confirm from my tech team, just asking my production manager just to advise if the recording that we were trying to play, if that is now available, or if we just proceed and move to our interview with our expert online. All right, so yes, I am told by my production manager that we are going to be able to see that last video that we had spoken about, where Mr. Brooks in that engagement spoke to us about the meat samples and the pathogens there. And so we take that video, and then right after that, we go to our next guest on this program. Thank you so much for staying with us here at the Information Hotspot News Network.
So in the case of meat samples, within the lab, we've had a fair amount of samples that we've tested, and we've definitely come across some pathogens in meat samples. The important thing to note depends on the state of the meat product. So, in the sense of, does it require further processing or is it to be consumed as is? Some of the pathogens that we've detected from these meat samples includes like your salmonella, your listeria. One of the important pathogen that's targeted in production of ham is what we call Clostridium, and specifically Clostridium botulinum. The curing agent used during production is specific for targeting that organism. So if the curing process is not done properly during the production of like your hams, you might end up with a situation where the pathogen Clostridium is able to grow in your product. Now, Clostridium botulinum in particular, that particular species of the pathogen, produces what we refer to as the botulinum toxins. Same toxin that you might associate with what people do for Botox treatments. Now, this toxin is very dangerous, can be very deadly. It basically interferes with the nervous system if it's consumed. So consuming a product like that has the Clostridium within it, depending on the amount that's there or the amount of toxin that it produces within the meat, would allow for symptoms of botulism poisoning to appear within the individual. This usually ranges from as something simple as starting to develop your typical food poisoning symptoms, fever, diarrhea, probably feeling some amount of nausea, and it can become as severe as where you start to have difficulty breathing because it's interfering with your nervous system, that affects the whole mechanism of breathing and can be fatal in the end if not properly treated immediately.
That is frightening. That is frightening. So therefore, food safety is essential at the point of the manufacture.
Very.
And also, the Bureau of Standards, through its microbiology laboratory, is playing a key role in ensuring that we save lives.
Very.
That was a sobering message from Mr. Brooks. We understand now how important it is that each of us, every step of the way, what it is we do. Joining us at this point, we're very happy to have Mr. Lenworth O'Clark, Food Inspector in the Food Inspectorate of the NCRA, the National Compliance and Regulatory Authority, who is joining us live. He is not in studio with us, but we are happy to welcome him to the proceedings. Mr. Clark, are you there? Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm here, Mr. Leng. Thank you much for having me. I just stepped out of a meeting to join you guys, a training in particular.
Well, we're so very happy to have you. You understand the important issue that we are discussing here. Given the recent occurrences, and you will be aware of what has happened in the last few days, and this very tragic turn of events with the news that has now come that 5 persons have died, allegedly from eating this contaminated food. We have asked you here to help our food processors to understand the importance of achieving food safety. We have a few questions for you, though. Some especially linked to this pathogen that we hear surfacing, listeria, which is suspected to have led to the illness and now possibly the death of these our citizens. What are some ways a food processor can reduce contamination by the listeria bacteria in a food processing establishment or plant?
All right, thank you very much for that question, and good morning to you and good morning to the persons who are in participation in this forum. But before I answer that question, Sir Leng, let me just give a clear definition of what we consider food to be. Food is anything that is processed, semi-processed, or raw that is intended for human consumption. So from one series, and that excludes like your pharmaceuticals, probably like and tobaccos, but anything that is processed, semi-processed, or raw that is intended for human consumption. As it relates to the organism, Listeria bacteria, as we can appreciate, it is found in soil, it can be found in water or animal feces. However, unfortunately, it can reach our food. Persons may be infected by the ingestion of raw vegetables that has been contaminated with soil that has the organism, or from manures. It can be also ingested by contaminated meat or unpasteurized milk or food, or certain foods like hot dogs or deli meat. And it can actually happen after post-processed handling. I mean, after you process the food and you're handling the food thereafter, you can actually have that organism being introduced to the product. And I guess our microbiologist has already explained and expounded on what that is. So to answer your question, let me start with raw materials or ingredients. So from our viewpoint as the regulators, all raw material used in the preparation of processed food shall be wholesome. And in essence, it means that your raw materials or your ingredients that you use should be good, and it should be up to standard, or the required standards, I should say. Also, to continue answering your question, is that all processed food shall be fit for human consumption. And in particular, it shall be free from any harmful substance. And Listeria in particular is seen as an harmful substance. And it should also be free, shall not contain any objectionable contaminants. And again, Listeria is viewed as that. All processed food shall be manufactured and be kept in an area that is sanitary. So it should be clean. As a matter of fact, let I pause here to say, I mainly be saying to you that cleanliness is next to godliness. So when you process it now, after you process that food, it shall be sufficiently processed and packaged, and to ensure that the container that is in is also free of any contaminant. All containers, whether it be for your raw materials and not for your processed food, shall be cleanable and always be kept in a cleanly manner. So pretty much those are some of the things that will help to reduce the contamination of this Listeria bacteria at food processing facilities.
Thank you so much for that very in-depth response, and for particularly helping us to understand exactly what we consider food. Most important, we have been assuming that all of us understand what it is here, but you have made a very valuable point. As we continue, Mr. Clark, what about the equipment that processors use in their food processing establishments and their plants, their factories, homes? Can they contribute to or impact contamination by Listeria bacteria?
Yeah, the short answer to that, Mr. Leng, and thanks again for your question, is yes, it can have some impact, and sometimes we take it for granted. However, I must say that all equipment and utensils that is used to prepare processed food, it shall be constructed in such a way that it's easily clean and is cleanable at all times. And the material that is used to construct such equipment or utensil, you shall be able to withstand chemical when it's exposed during cleaning and sanitation. My apologies for that. Importantly, because processing also helps to kill Listeria. In particular, anything over 165 degrees Fahrenheit, or just about 74 degrees Celsius, will kill the organism. So therefore, your eat processing equipment shall be properly designed and shall be installed and carefully maintained. And all the necessary devices and instruments like your thermometers and your pressure gauge should be accurate in terms of to ensure that processing is done correctly.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. How should food processing establishments therefore set up their facilities, be constructed to reduce contamination in this regard? How do you
Yes.
do the outlay?
Thanks again for that question. A food processing facility, you can see you have like the buildings, the floors, you have the walls, you might need to have screens, and in particular, it needs to have some bathroom or lavatories. So in terms of the building that is used for processing of food, in particular, food processing establishment shall be of a permanent nature and shall be constructed of material to ensure cleanliness. Again, you hear I mention cleanliness, because again, cleanliness is next to godliness. You get me? All floors should be capable of thoroughly drain, because you do not want water, stagnant water, to be in your processing facility. Again, the walls, the ceiling, the partitions, your doors, even the posts or any other structure in the interior of any room that food is being prepared, stored, or packaged should be thoroughly clean and should be maintained in a clean state. So the construction is important of the establishment, but also it should be able to be clean and should be maintained in a clean state. Owing to the fact that animal feces can also help to spread this organism, it is important that screens or any suitable protection over doors, windows, or any opening to that establishment prevent the entry of animals in anywhere that food is prepared, stored, kept, or transported. Another thing, also your lavatory.
Just before you get to that point,
Uh-huh.
if I might ask, so in the context of cottage industry players who
Yeah.
are operating from home, are you saying that animals should not be in that space?
Definitely, we're saying that animals should not be in the space, especially again where the food is prepared, stored, kept, or transported. So even if you have a pet, where if you're having a cottage industry where you're preparing the food in maybe a little kitchen space, your animal should not be there. If you're transporting the food to, whether it be the raw material or the finished goods, you cannot have your pets inside your vehicle, especially close to the food whenever you're transporting the product. But back to another important part is that the bathrooms or your lavatory, the sink, or the manholes that are inside the facility or that is at an establishment shall not be open into any room or other places where the food again is prepared, stored, kept, or transported. So don't have it opening out there, because you can have the prevalence of microorganisms, not just Listeria, but other organisms entering that space and may contaminate your food.
So sanitization, regular sanitization is important as a part of the daily, weekly process.
Definitely, it is important and one of the most important parts. So sanitation and again, proper process technique will reduce this contamination.
Mr. Clark, thank you so much. You have shared very useful information. Other than the building, how the building should be constructed and other pointers that you have mentioned earlier, are there other things that we would want food processors to ensure that, that things are kept clean at this food processing? You have spoken about and you have emphasized several times cleanliness being next to godliness. Are there any other things that a food processor needs to ensure are kept clean as a food processing establishment to prevent food being contaminated with this or other bacteria.
Yes, yeah, definitely, Mr. Leng, and to the audience, because sometimes we take it for granted. But the yards outside the building, the outer buildings, anything that is associated with the establishment shall be kept in a clean and a sanitary state at all times. And this is the next thing. And this point that I'm bringing across, food processors has been doing it for a long time, not just because of COVID. So all practicable steps shall be taken to ensure that every person handling the food washes their hands thoroughly. Wash their hands thoroughly immediately before commencing work each day and immediately before resuming work if they're absent for a little period of time. Or you might have situations where they might have to pick up something off the floor. They need to wash their hands. If you might have a situation where they use the bathroom, they need to wash their hands. You might have a situation that they need to adjust their hair. They need to wash their hands before going back to handling the food. Every person employed or every person entering, so it's not just the persons who are employed to the organization, because you can have contractors, you can have even inspectors, different inspectors entering. Those persons entering where you are processing food should be clad in overgowns and suitable head coverings. And those should not be worn outside should not be worn outside the establishment. Therefore, in essence, what I'm saying, no person in a dirty or unclean condition should be permitted in anywhere food is prepared, kept, stored, or transported. Importantly too, each establishment shall provide safe and adequate supply of both hot and cold water. They should also have adequate sanitary convenience, and they should have suitable and prompt collection of disposal of waste or refuse, and they should have adequate ventilation. And all of these is important because, as we mentioned earlier, how these organisms get in. These ways can actually reduce organism, not just listeria or whatever bacteria that we're speaking of, but any microorganism. In the law, if you look at JS36, it tells you that at least one person.
And when you speak of JS36, what exactly is a JS36, Mr. Clare?
Pardon that I didn't explain. The JS36 is a short name for the Jamaican Standard Specification for Processed Food General. And that in particular is the standard that is used by operators of food processing establishment to become registered. But it also gives great outline in terms of how your establishment should be and what should be inside that establishment. Yeah. So again, I was making mention that at least one person in the establishment shall be designated by the operator of the establishment for the person that maintains sanitation. Yeah. Last but not least, every person employed, and I will repeat this, every person employed in the establishment shall hold a valid certificate of health, meaning that you should have a valid certificate, a valid.
Is that what you call food handlers?
Food handlers permit. My apologies.
Right,
you should have a valid food handlers permit. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Lane. And as I mentioned earlier, these are just things that you put in place to prevent contamination of your product at the end of the day.
Mr. Clark, thank you so much. I mean, this has been very useful for me, and I'm not even involved in the food processing industry. I'm sure that our audience, persons involved, would have benefited significantly. Just as a reminder of ways, and if you say, if we just maybe just the mere fact of washing our hands consistently would be just one main key factor in helping ensure the safety of all of our people here in Jamaica.
Definitely, Mr. Lang.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. Thank you so much. This has been very insightful. We thank you. We release you to return to the meeting, and I'm very thank you for joining our program this morning.
I thank you very much. All the best to you and all the best to the participants.
Thank you so much.
All right then. Bye-bye.
Bye. My audience, thank you so very much. I think we should take a break at this time. We'll allow for a commercial or two and return shortly with the much more critical information for you, our food safety, our food processors.
It's 2:45 in the morning and you're ready to take your business to the next level. Where do you start? Start with well-regulated standards. The National Compliance and Regulatory Authority can help you maintain predictable quality standards critical to your business sustainability. We monitor, verify, and regulate standards to guarantee consistent output, on demand, on time, every time. We're in almost every industry and trade, inspecting and regulating on the front lines of securing the nation's health, safety, and fairness in trade. The NCRA will help your business to stand up to more than just a test, but to the test of time. Get ready to succeed with the NCRA. Health, safety, and fairness in trade.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. I mean, a challenging time in this country, but we're using the opportunity for learning new lessons and for reminding ourselves of some of those important lessons. And saying the word lessons, I think it's an opportune time for us to consider how it is that as food processors, lessons can be shared with you. And so we are very happy this morning, after having heard from Mr. Rajiv Brooks of the Microbiology Laboratory, having heard from Mr. Lenworth Clark, I think it's an opportune time to invite and to welcome our next guest to our program as we look at food safety, to invite Mrs. Sonia Morgan. She's coordinator of the BSJ's Quality Institute, their training arm. And Mrs. Morgan, who has had an extensive career in education, in standards development, in accreditation, comes to us armed with a wealth of knowledge. And I'm sure that her leadership has benefited the BSJ's Quality Institute. Sonia, thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Ellis. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, I am trying to get my camera to open.
And we are seeing you.
Right.
So good to see you. So good to see you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
We have been we have become aware in the last few days of this illness, the illness arising from food that would have been consumed by our people. And just this morning, the news indicating that 5 persons have died. How can your Quality Institute of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica help people to prevent any such recurrence? We should never, ever in 2020 or beyond having situations like this.
May I say,
help us understand.
May I say, Ellis, that I would like to add my sympathies and condolences to the families of those 5 persons. It is indeed a tragedy. 5 may seem to be a relatively small number, but for even one person to die from food-related illness in Jamaica in the present stage of times is really not very good news at all. And so with 5 persons dying, that's a crisis. How do we start to work to make sure that there is no repeat or recurrence of this type of situation? We have to make sure that we are informed. To know is very, very important. We have to know what it is that we are supposed to do in the first place. without knowledge, the people perish, as they say. And so
And your agency, your department, your quality institute certainly has had a track record of working with several of our food processors and other industries as well. So share us about this vision and knowledge that you
yes,
offer.
what we do is that we try to offer trainings that not only give you knowledge and information, but make you understand the need to change your behavior, change your approach, change your systems and methods for ones that are more acceptable internationally, ones that are safe and ones that bring quality. And so we really begin the journey in food safety by introducing you to the various food safety management systems so that you know which one applies to your type of organization. Then we encourage you to get training in how you formulate your product, because various compounds will react together in different ways. That's a whole line of chemistry and biology that we need to understand. Then we have to be able to determine if our product is as we want it. Does it taste right? Does it have the right color, texture, and so on? So we do like sensory evaluation. The environment in which you operate needs to be sanitized and clean. It needs to be germ-free. And many people think they know how to make an environment germ-free, but you would be surprised to know all that is involved in scientifically doing this properly. So there is training for sanitation for food production workers, and there is good manufacturing practices, because you have to manufacture according to certain methods, procedures, and so on. You have to make sure that certain agents are not going to prevent you from getting safe, wholesome food. So GMP and HACCP management trainings are critical.
And GMP, that's your good manufacturing practices,
Good
right?
manufacturing practices. That's the first level, module 1, prerequisite for food safety.
So I've just been employed to a factory. This would be a good course for me.
It would be a good training, yes, it would be a good training. But remember, I said to you that we are now encouraging people to start with the training that introduces them to food safety management systems,
Right.
because you need to know which one to select for your company in the first place.
Great.
So
great.
that goes ahead of the GMP and the others that we mentioned. If I may continue for a minute or two.
You were saying
after
GMP and HACCP.
And HACCP, yes, because as you know, HACCP will teach our people what parts of their system they have to pay very critical attention to and control, because if they don't control these steps, these various steps in an entire process, then the whole process can go out of alignment and there can be problems. So that's what HACCP does. It makes you recognize what we call the critical control points in your food safety management process and system. Very, very, very important. And many countries that you will try to ship to now, even locally, many buyers are requiring food from a factory that has a HACCP food safety system in place, because people don't want to be poisoned and they don't want to be killed. They don't want to be made sick. So HACCP, a step up from the GMP, very, very, very important training. There is one more that is becoming extremely popular, because clients worldwide want to know that your company has a preventive controls qualified individual, PCQI training. They want to know that you have someone in your organization that understands food safety, that is competent and knowledgeable in the test methods and procedures that are required to assure food safety and the whole management approach that you need to have with respect to food safety. So that particular go-to person in your organization, which is called your preventive controls qualified individual, that is very important, because you want to prevent. You don't want to make something happen and then fix it when it comes on to food safety. You want to prevent something from going wrong in the first place. And
My
so
grandmother would always say prevention is better than cure.
better than cure every time. And of course, there are other supporting trainings, because if you are a modern company, whether you're a one-man company, 10-man, 5-man, 100-man company, or woman company, you have to face the reality that if you don't have a quality organization, if you can't determine what causes problems in your organization, if you can't control risk, if you can't provide a working environment that is not showing any occupational health or safety hazards, then people will not want to do business with you. Traders overseas, they are asking for evidence that you have this kind of training for your staff, that you have this kind of system in place. So the other supporting trainings are in 9001 for quality, root cause analysis, risk manager, and occupational health and safety. Those are trainings to support the food safety management process.
Mrs. Morgan, thank you so much for sharing this information. Do we have a culture of wanting to learn in Jamaica? Do you find food processors are embracing opportunities for training and education of their staff? Are they coming into you for training? Will you take training out to them? In this fast-paced environment, how can we ensure that more of our food safety or food professionals or food processors are engaged? And how does a quality institute really facilitate going into business operations?
What we do is that we make use of the virtual space for connection by the promotion that is done for us. Ellis, from your very area, the marketing area, CCSB, is invaluable. On the social media, there is always information that is being put out about the trainings that we are having. But we also telemarket, and we do business-to-business sales meetings where we go into companies and we speak with them and we determine their situations, their needs, their goals, their plans, their intentions, and we work together to determine what series of trainings that they need. Most persons don't come for one training. They come for a series, and they come in the way they can afford, because we are cognizant of the fact that you have to manage the costs for your production process. But training is not one of the costs that we should cut out quickly, because you have to start your process knowing right from wrong, knowing what is critical, knowing what will work against you if you don't control it. And so we would like to encourage all manufacturers to recognize that training is a critical part of production. That's where it starts, because you need the knowledge on the standards. We don't have a quality culture in Jamaica, but it is changing, because there are some companies that come to me. I don't even have to call them. They call me very regularly on a quarterly basis, a monthly basis. Mrs. Morgan, can we get some training in so-and-so for our staff? Mrs. Morgan, we saw on your website training for so-and-so on the social media. And so they keep connected with us, and they send people to us regularly. We have public trainings virtually. We have them face-to-face. We also have online trainings, which are accessible through the Bureau's website. So, and they can call us at any time. Our numbers are promoted in your programs and on the Bureau's website. The one I know by heart is 926-314025. That one I've known for the 30 years I'm here. But there are many other numbers. So we reach out to people, people reach out to us. And finally, because of the success factor that has come from persons who have trained successfully with us, our marketing team, your team again, was able to make video clips of successful companies that have trained with us, and their testimonial on how well the training worked for them and let their business jump from A up to B, you know, from 50 to 70 to 80 to 100%. So fisherman never says that his fish is stink. Jamaican people know that expression. But I am here to say that without knowledge, people perish. So get your training so that you can be assured to have safe food as your product and delight your clients, grow your markets, and have continued successful business, and of course, profitability and prosperity.
Mrs. Morgan, thank you so very much for sharing with us. And as you sought to sell your fish, we know that you would always speak of the best quality fish, and we will not rob or seize of those fish that we would not want to have extinct and that would affect our coral reef growth.
That's right.
Thank you so much for your very engaging presentation this morning. We are trusting that persons will be seeking to be in touch with you for the services that you offer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of program.
Thank you so very much, and thanks for joining us. That was Sonia Morgan, coordinator of the Quality Institute of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica's training arm. We thank you. We have been taking a look this morning at ways of ensuring food safety in our country following the situation, the unfortunate situation that has come to light in recent times with food poisoning, and learning just this morning that there would have been 5 deaths. We take a break from our information hotspot network, and we take a message from our sponsor, the BSJ. And until as we prepare for that commercial break, our commercial is coming in. Food safety services offered by the Bureau of Standards Jamaica. A very special menu presented: salmonella detection, hypoglycemia A analysis, birth strength test for your food safety services. Help reduce risks. Access these food safety services today from the Bureau of Standards Jamaica. Thanks for staying with us and for engaging with us. We have been getting quite a bit this morning, and we also reached out to the packaging laboratory of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, where we were seeking to understand how packaging impacts food safety and the importance of packaging. And so we will be getting some information coming up soon from our packaging laboratory personnel, and we go to our studios as they bring up that clip. Good morning. Please go ahead. For the purposes of this interview, please state your name and your position here at the Bureau of Standards.
Good morning all. I'm Gerwan Spence, Acting Manager for the Packaging, Non-Metallic and Furniture Branch here at the Bureau of Standards, Jamaica.
Thank you so much for speaking with us today, Mr. Spence. From your perspective, please tell us the importance of packaging to help ensure food safety.
All right, first and foremost, packaging is very important and is a critical part of ensuring that food safety is maintained. We want to ensure that our customers are having no issues with food purchase through any retail or wholesale markets at all. Firstly, we want to ensure that the type of packaging material used is made of inert material or inactive material, hence not to create a reaction with the food inside of the package. And that is key, first and foremost.
And when you say not to create a reaction,
Just explain that a little bit for those persons who may not totally be familiar with inert and inactive.
All right. So inert is just another word of saying it is inactive, or inactive meaning that the food is unable to create any type of disturbance or react in any familiar way so as to create food spoilage or to have the food deteriorate over time.
Are you saying, therefore, for those of us who are viewing this product, that you can have some packaging material that could actually deteriorate or allow food to deteriorate and impact
Yes.
me when I eat that food?
Yes, there
Explain
is.
that. Tell us about that, or share an example.
For example, if you are sealing food inside of a container, whether it is plastic wrapped or if it is modified atmospheric packaging, meaning the air inside is at a certain amount of nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide levels, so as to have the food maintain its credibility and to have a prescribed shelf life, then you would have to ensure that the amount that is in the amount of air or contamination coming from outside of the package is at its minimum. So when I say that the package should be sealed and have a minimum amount of contamination coming from outside, it's basically simply saying that whenever you have packaged your food, you want it to keep the freshness and preserve it as long as it can, based on its natural state. All right?
Thank you for that. The BSJ's discussion with Mr. Gervon Spence, acting manager in the packaging, labeling, and furniture branch, was very informative. Mr. Spence outlined to us not only the importance of packaging, but he also spoke to some specific situations. He shared with us, for example, on light sensitivity for liquid, for juices and for liquid products. And let us take a look at that clip from Mr. Gervon Spence.
There are certain food substances that are light sensitive, right? And they are able to react with certain chemicals inside of foods. So meaning certain chemicals will be triggered to lead to a chemical reaction, right? Energy drink foods that are high in vitamin C, those are usually packaged in opaque or dark containers or packages that would be covered or fully wrapped to ensure that light is not triggered or cause a reaction inside. There's no way of light passing to react with the substance inside.
Right. Are you saying then that there can be a reaction, and what are some of the things, what are some of the illnesses that could occur in persons because of this reaction taking place?
Well, let's put it simple, as our Jamaicans would say. If you've had food that has reacted with the package, there's a possibility of having a belly ache. Your belly can hurt, you can have a belly run, things like that. It could also lead, the severity could also lead to death, depending on what how serious bacteria growth is within the food and what type of bacteria has been developed.
As we did our research here at Information Hotspot News Network, we recognized just how in the Jamaican context, people very often just treat diarrhea, running belly with scant regard. Persons would take home remedies. And as a result, it was very difficult for us to ascertain all the
information, all the data. When we looked at the US and we were able to pull that information, while we were able to get some data, we were not able to verify all of the numbers, and so we have not shared it. But maybe during the presentation, as we look at our Food Safety Modernization Secretariat, some of this data may in fact come up. Importantly, in discussing with Mr. Spence of the packaging laboratory, he was able to outline for us services that they offer and tips for food processors. We share these videos with you now before we continue and have some engagement with Mrs. Navinia Wellington Ford of the National Certification Body of Jamaica. So we take these two features and then we move on into hearing some more about certification. What services do you offer here at the Bureau of Standards that can help a food processor? What are some of the services generally in terms of packaging and labeling that can help a food processor who is going into business or who wants to ensure that his product is good for the local market and for the export market?
All right, so at the Bureau of Standards, the packaging department can facilitate testing such as drop tests to ensure that the integrity of the packages can withstand a certain amount of weight falling from a certain height. There is also testing of tear strength and burst strength. Tear strength contributing to how easily the package will tear when a certain amount of weight is applied again, simply putting it as tear. Burst, when a certain amount of weight is applied again to the package, how it will burst or create a dentation impact within the package. There is can seam analysis for canned food, where you ensure that there is no contamination between the outside atmosphere and inside of the can. And that again is also critical, because for canned foods, especially, there is always the chance of having microorganism growth inside of the can. And so can seam is very important there.
Tell us how we get to access these services.
So you can access these services by coming into the BSJ. You can first, if you're unsure of the process, you can always shoot an email to gspence@bsj.org.jm or to info@bsj.org.jm. You can come into us. You can, if you prefer to have a conversation, we are here to help. So you can come into us and we will advise you on what is best. There are our packaging standards that are available to our customers. And it's simply coming, dropping off the sample, making payment, and you will ensure to get your report within the time frame stipulated.
Is there any other message that you want to share with our viewers, Mr. Spence, in relation to packaging and packaging helping food safety and the services of the BSJ? Is there anything else that you wish to add?
What I would want to say to persons in the food industry is to just ensure that whatever packaging is used to package your food items, just to ensure that these are not active materials with the food inside. All right, just ensure that it is food grade and that the material is inert. For consumers, ensure that whenever you are buying food items in supermarkets, wholesale, wherever it may be, ensure that you inspect or look at the package before buying. Ensure that you have read the label correctly as well.
Thank you. You have just made an important point about labeling. Yes. Should there be a particular instruction as we purchase food items? Will you find instructions on food items? Talk to us a little bit about labeling now. I know we have spoken about packaging, right, but labeling is an important thing that maybe you could just address in terms of directions for use or storage.
Storage, right. All right. So for certain items, storage conditions is a must, right? Meats, there is also the use of any substance at all that you know of that can be broken down and leave at room temperature or at ambient temperature, then you want to ensure that it is kept at the proper storage condition, meaning temperature-wise. So ensure that the label indicates the proper storage instruction, and after opening, ensure that the instruction is there on how to store it after opening. And if it should be consumed within a certain time frame after opening, ensure that this is stated.
Are there tips that you would give to food processors generally in terms of how they can ensure, just along the continuum as they seek to prepare their items and they're packaging their items and even labeling? Can I put the label directly onto the product, onto the food product?
Well, onto the package material, yes, you can directly put the label information there, as well as you can design the package where it is already labeled. So, meaning you have printers which would design your packaging material to whatever you want it to look like.
All right.
Right? Selling your product is a part of labeling it and marketing it, and so you want to make it appealing to customers as well.
All right, so I get that, but would I, for example, if I was doing a coconut drops, I couldn't put the paper on the drops itself? Is that okay?
No. On the drop itself, meaning on the food item
on the
itself?
Food item itself, could I do that?
No, it has to be strictly on the package.
All right.
On the package.
Right. And why couldn't I do that? What would be so bad with me putting this sheet of paper, the slip of paper onto the food item itself?
Well, the food item itself, remember there's always the possibility of it reacting inside of the inner film of the package.
Mm-hmm.
To avoid there's a chances of having ink inside of the package, and so you want to eliminate any chemical reaction. Inks are made of chemicals, and so you want to prevent any chemical reaction happening between the ink itself and the food inside. So it is best to keep it on the inside, on the outside, sorry.
Rounding off this presentation from the packaging laboratory, we will take a commercial break, and right after the commercial break, in which we round up and just look at services offered by the BSJ's packaging laboratory, next up will be a brief interview with the manager of the National Certification Body of Jamaica, Mrs. Navinia Wellington Ford. Manufacturing packaging materials, reduce packaging problems with the BSJ's burst strength test. The BSJ's packaging laboratory performs the burst strength test to measure the degree at which sheet materials such as paper and corrugated board will split. Contact the BSJ today. It's our privilege to be joined at this time by the manager of the National Certification Body of Jamaica, Mrs. Navinia Wellington Ford. Mrs. Ford, one simple question for you. How could certification have helped prevent this situation?
Good morning, Mr. Ling. Thank you very much for having the NCBJ here today. How could certification help to prevent this issue from happening? It would have been based on the fact that with certification, a company is responsible to conduct their risk assessment and risk analysis. They're able to, and they're responsible to ensure that they are controlling any possible hazards that might happen. They are responsible for checking at the various points that the possible hazards can happen and control. So when you look at a food safety system and being certified to such a system, it simply means that you would have gone the extra mile to put in these standards and get certification to ensure that there is a third party, there is somebody that will come into your premises to do an audit, to evaluate your system against the standards that you have put in, to ensure that you are meeting all the requirements that have been mentioned so far earlier, and that you're keeping these requirements. So in a nutshell, that is how certification would have been able to prevent this from happening, because certification is a preventative approach, we like to say. It's not something that controls after the fact, because after the fact is too late. So you put certification in, you go along to be certified to ensure that you control as much as possible any risk that can happen, because you are preventing these instances and issues from happening.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Now, earlier we had Mr. Lenworth Clark of the NCRA. Now, Mr. Clark was speaking to several things that could have contributed to the illness. Now, we just need to point out to our audience that the NCRA, as a regulator, ensures that all food processing entities are registered. But you have just spoken about certification. Registration is compulsory. Certification is voluntary. And so there may be a tendency, Mrs. Ford, for persons to dismiss certification. How do you say to a food processor who is already challenged that certification really will make a difference? Or you choose to do this and it will make a difference. Why is it important for them?
What we say to food processors about why is it that they should engage in a voluntary scheme? You want to ensure that you are producing quality products and services. You want to ensure that when you look at your products and services, the level of risk is reduced to a manageable level. You want to ensure that at the end of the day, you are producing quality products that ensure that any customer that purchases from you will be satisfied at the highest level. And that's one of the reasons why we say to customers and manufacturers to go the extra mile. Looking at your statutory and your regulatory requirement, those are all well and good, and they're very good for you to have, because without having them, you cannot embark on the voluntary aspect, such as what the NCBJ is doing. But we are saying to you, go the extra mile. When you look at regulatory requirement or statutory requirement, a lot of times it's considered as your basic requirement or your bare minimum requirement, because these are set in such a way that all manufacturers, regardless of what level, must be able to attain them, and it does not put any undue stress on the system. Let me hasten to say, certification does not put any undue stress on the system. However, you go an extra mile. More than just the basic requirement is required when you are looking at certification, implementing a standard and getting certified. One of the things that we do know is that more and more the markets are asking whether you are planning to manufacture and sell only in Jamaica, or you're selling in the region, or you're going in an international market. More and more food buyers are asking if your products are certified. More and more, the bare minimum is not able to take you across the markets, or if they are able to take you in the market, there are additional requirements that you have to meet. You may have to meet additional testing, right? Or you have to meet additional sampling. Whereas if it is that you are certified, there is a certain level of assurance that is given. There is a certain level of confidence that is given by your system that you have met these requirements and that you're maintaining these requirements, because without maintaining these requirements, then you would not be certified. Your certification would either be suspended or withdrawn.
Thank you. What are some of the systems, or what can persons be certified through the NCBJ, particularly for our food processors?
For food processors, we have a total of 6 systems that they can be certified to. Depends on which market that they are targeting. We have systems that are considered as management system, and these are the ISO 9001, which is a quality management. A lot of persons would say quality management with food processors, but we have seen food processors that have used the quality management system and its standard because of its applicability, and it might have been what their market is asking for. We also have the ISO 22000, which is a food safety management system standard. And this standard is applicable to any part of the food chain. Okay. And then we do have some local certification programs. The Hotspot recognition program, again, this is a food safety system that looks at the principles of HACCP being implemented in a company. These principles speak about hazard analysis, knowing where your critical control points are, which means that any points that cannot be breached without there being a failure in your system, in essence. We also have the certification of agricultural produce program, and this is for farmers, because a lot of times, as I think it was Mr. Clark had said previously, our farmers, or was a regime said, our farmers might not necessarily consider that they are a part of the food safety chain or the integration to ensure that their food safety is maintained. And this is one of the reasons why we have this program here for farmers that are using good agricultural practices, and we certify them to give a credence to the fact that they are maintaining food safety on their farms. We also have the organic certification, because more and more persons are saying that they're eating as close to nature as possible. And this is what the whole principle of organic is all about. So we do have the organic certification, and we are now launching our Global Gap certification. And Global Gap, again, is targeting our farmers. And this is based also on an international standard. So those are the certification programs that we have to offer to market, that, that these programs are able to support a business entity, support a food business entity to ensure that they are built on the premise of what a food safety system should be. I really like the lineup that you had today in speaking with your experts. You spoke with persons from the labs, and when you are going for certification, you have to ensure that you verify the system, and lab testing and validation. Lab testing can also be part of your validation activity. You also spoke with the Quality Institute, and training and competency is also one of the building blocks in strengthening any company, and it's a part of you being certified. You have to demonstrate that you're workers know about food safety, not just the basic of knowing to wash your hands. And let us not negate the importance of washing your hands, because it is still seen as one of the most effective ways
Indeed.
of arresting the spread of contamination. Okay, so the importance of being trained and being competent is very, very important. I cannot we cannot overemphasize. And then we also spoke about packaging. And again, this is also important because packaging material is seen as one of the barriers, one of the protection that a food is given between contaminants and they call it the sterile environment that is within the packaging. So it is very important when you look at all of those that will come together, that will support your system. Mrs. Morgan from the Quality Institute spoke about good manufacturing practices. And this is very important because these are all building blocks or pillars on which a food safety system is built on, and certification supports that. Certification creates an enabling environment for you as a business owner, whether you have a cottage industry or you have a larger company or you have a micro company. It is important for you to have a standard in place and go for certification, because this is what shows that you have you demonstrate the importance of food safety to your buyers and your customers. Not only that, but you demonstrate the importance of having a food safety culture in your food business.
Mrs. Ford, I'm going to ask you 2 questions as we wrap up. How do we contact you? And most importantly, I'm sure the food processors would want to know, are your services affordable?
I will start with the second question first. Yes, our services are affordable. Our mission says it. Our mission is to provide affordable certification services to Jamaica and the Caribbean region. We are here in Jamaica and the region to provide this service because we are in support of our food business operators. So yes, our services are affordable, our prices are competitive, and I would go the extra mile to say that we are more than comparable to any price that our clients here in Jamaica would get from any of our overseas competitors. And by the way, more than likely, you're not paying airfare. And so how do you contact us? We can be contacted via our website, www.ncbj.org and .jm, and also you can contact us via email, and that is info@ncbj.org.jm. We're also on LinkedIn, Facebook, social media. Look us up and we're there. But I will also put our contact details in the chat.
Mrs. Ford, thank you so very much for joining us today. Thank you for sharing the information and for encouraging our people to go that extra mile.
You're very welcome.
Take a break.
Thank you for having us.
Great.
When your business is certified by the National Certification Body of Jamaica, it means that your business is operating using globally competitive standards, and that's something worth investing in. Certification you can bank on, literally. Now your business is ready to go places. Get ready to succeed with NCBJ, your key to scalability. Compete globally.
Yes, what a morning we've had. And so as people say, out of disappointment comes so much good, and out of challenges come great opportunities. Here we are facing this crisis, but many of us are food processors prepared to go beyond our shores. Mrs. Ford has just spoken about the certification body offering services not only locally, but regionally. and competing with those persons in first world countries. So therefore, many of us here are exporting or seeking to export. We want to take to the skies, or we want to use a wide ocean to take our products all across the world. What do we need to do to ensure that as we embark on food production, we ensure food safety and ensure that as we export, we are not faced with challenges of persons becoming ill from our products? As we wrap up our presentations today, we welcome the coordinator of the Food Safety Modernization Secretariat at the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, Mrs. Sharika Sachel Knight. She is going to come and to present the case for exporting as food processors. We welcome you, Mrs. Knight. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Mr. Ling, and I'm absolutely happy to lend my voice in this conversation as we talk about the importance of food safety, and particularly as we look at the perspective of exports. Now, the purpose of this brief presentation really is to talk about the importance of food safety. We've heard it so many times before during the course of this morning. So I think we are understanding just how important it is for us to talk about food safety. I look a little bit about the impact of unsafe food. We've been hearing some of it before, so it may be a little bit of a repeat, but that's okay. And then we're gonna look a little bit at some of the market requirements for persons who are interested in sending your food to, for example, the US. So that is where we will zoom in. And then I'll talk a little bit about how the Bureau of Standards, through some of its services, can help you to ensure that your food is safe and to help you to meet the requirement for the markets. Now, for persons who may have joined a little bit late and you're hearing tidbits about this scenario that would have happened, what it is we have heard that persons would have partaken from certain food items, and as a result of that, persons are hospitalized and some are in the hospital. Breaking news, certainly. And I want to just jump in to say that breaking news could have started from a very simple and natural process as family enjoying food around the table. And as Jamaicans, we love our food, you know, because we gather around the food to celebrate our birthdays, when we have promotions and people will call our girlfriends, or we have the guys hanging out and we will have our food. And so that particular scenario could have started very simply with just people having their food with family and friends. But one of the things that we never ever think about is whether or not the food will have a negative impact on us, that it will make us sick or it is not safe. Because I think we take for granted that the manufacturers, processors, those involved in the food production are doing what they need to do to ensure that the food is safe. But alas, we have seen the circumstances where persons are ill, or God forbid, like we mentioned in this scenario this morning, that persons would have died. And so it is important to note that food safety is something that you can't overemphasize the importance of food safety. Mr. Leng had mentioned that some countries are collecting their data a little bit easier and a little bit seamlessly than we sometimes are able to here in Jamaica. But we're seeing from them, for example, in the United States, where 3,000 deaths occur every single year because persons would have eaten food that is contaminated. And we heard about some of the pathogens before. 48 million people suffer from foodborne illnesses every year, 128,000 hospitalized. And the Economic Research Center in the US are reporting that they estimate that foodborne illnesses caused by some of these pathogens are costing the US $15.5 billion on an annual basis. If we jump to what is happening even in Canada, for example, 240 persons die every single year because of contaminated food. 4 million Canadians, 1 in 8 persons, get sick each year from eating food that is contaminated. So food safety and the impact of unsafe food, it is absolutely real. Mr. Leng also mentioned that here in Jamaica, we don't necessarily, if we do have certain kinds of symptoms, it is sometimes not likely that we will go to the hospital or to the doctor unless the symptoms are severe enough for us to think we need to go. Or we drink the ginger tea, or we drink busy, or we do our own remedies. So sometimes we don't have the kind of numbers to just underscore just how important and impactful we here in Jamaica can be impacted by unsafe food as well. But the World Health Organization is basically telling us that some 420,000 people die every year from something that is preventable. I think we will understand the importance of saying that food safety is absolutely important. 600 million people in the world, 1 in 10. We have about 50 plus persons here online, and I'm sure if we do a quick poll to see the hands of those persons who may have been impacted one way or another from a foodborne illness, we can see the numbers showing similar to what the statistics are saying. Persons have felt the impact of food that may have been contaminated. And so that is why it is so important to be able to assure that the food will not cause any adverse health effects. Who would want to know that the food you would have produced has the potential to cause somebody to be ill, or God forbid, for them to die as a result? When we look at the food chain from farm to fork or your plate, we've heard some of that even from the beginning of this session today. And there are several spaces or processes or areas along the food supply chain where contamination of food can occur. And so again, we emphasize it is everybody's responsibility to ensure that the food that is being manufactured is safe. It is even the customers, the consumers' responsibility to ensure that the food is eaten the right way, you cook it the right way, the right temperature is achieved, the right storage temperatures for the cold storage is being achieved. Because what we're seeing here is the food is going to get from the farm through packaging, transporting it, distribution to your home. Now, this says your home, but let's face it, we're talking about the potential for export. Your home could be anywhere in the world. And with the opportunities that are now being presented, persons are able to get their foods into other markets. So something that we produce in Jamaica can be on the shelf somewhere in the US, in the UK, in Canada, in Australia, in Africa, wherever, because no trade allows us to spread our wings, so to speak, and we can get our Jamaican cuisine and our food and our spices, whatever it is, in these other spaces. Now, what if perhaps this is a chicken cave, but what if some products from it is from Jamaica? We're seeing that the salted butter is from Ireland, some of the garlic salt from China or from Spain, the pepper from Indonesia. We could even say pepper right now from Jamaica for that, for example. But suppose there was a Jamaican product that is involved in this, and this plate is sitting somewhere elsewhere in the world. God forbid, there is a situation like what we would have talked about in the scenario this morning, where the food is contaminated and it has caused death or illness. Now, what you will hear is the company, yes, and you will hear that it has caused this kind of devastating impact. But what you will also hear, the rhetoric will also say something like Jamaican food poison people all over the world, or the rhetoric could sound like Jamaica doesn't have proper food safety systems in place. So it is Jamaica that is impacted by this kind of a situation, not just the company, but Jamaica in general. And then there are import alerts and other kinds of notifications that are set up to highlight the issues that would have been experienced, the microorganism or the chemical or the whatever other hazard that would have been implicated and caused this food illness or death, for example. And so Jamaica is now going to come under scrutiny. And so each of us has a role to play. Therefore, if you are a local brand owner, manufacturer, importer, you are responsible for making sure that that food is safe. So even if you supply food locally, because you and I are eating the food here in the local markets, hoteliers are getting the food from the local markets, our tourists are enjoying the food here from Jamaica. So we now have to ensure that we are We know the requirements and we are complying with them. And certainly if you are interested in exporting your food, it is your responsibility to know and comply with the requirements for the country to which you're going to be exporting. In the introduction I mentioned, I'll just give a little bit of information about the US market, for example. The Food Safety Modernization Act is the law that governs food safety, and the Food and Drug Administration is the agency responsible for monitoring and enforcing food safety requirements for the US. And so one of the things that we want to mention is food facilities here in Jamaica. If you are interested in sending your food to the US, you must be registered with the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. Not only registered, but there is a biennial registration renewal that happens every even number year. So this year, 2022, the registration period started in October, on the 1st of October, and it will end December 31st this year. So every facility, once you would have registered with the FDA, you are also required to do a renewal. This is just a slide that has some information about how the process is done. It gives information about the FDA system that is used to do the registration, and it has guidance documents that persons can use when they want to find more information. The Food Safety Modernization Act also has 7 rules that cover requirements from farm all the way down the supply chain. So it looks at produce, it looks at transportation of human and animal food. It looks about how do facilities protect against intentional contamination. So somebody maliciously and to cause wide-scale harm and death, they have contaminated food. There is a provision for that, and requirements are required for that. For persons who do animal foods, there's a rule that covers that. But the preventive controls for human food is the one that the agro-processors will be more familiar with, those that are exporting and those that intend to export. You have to not just be familiar with this rule, but be in compliance with it. So if we jump a little bit quickly into it, the preventive controls for human food, it confirms the food industry's primary role in food safety. Preventing hazards, we heard a little bit about that in the previous presenters' information that they provided, and you must put risk-based preventive controls in place. There must be a food safety plan, and the plan must identify safety hazards that are associated with your foods, and you must implement preventive controls. So we'll talk about a hazard analysis. You've heard this before. So it is looking at any reasonable or known microorganism, chemicals, physical hazard like metal fragments, stones, hard plastic, wood chips, anything that is likely to be associated with the food that you produce or the process that you have, and determine if a preventive control, so it says that step where controls must be put in place to prevent the hazard or to eliminate that hazard from having an impact. So the preventive controls must be developed, must be implemented. And this is some of the requirements from the US market. It speaks about also, if you are a manufacturer and you identify that there's a particular ingredient that you're getting from your supplier, and you depend on the supplier to put in steps to control a particular hazard, then you must have a supplier chain program with appropriate verification activities, checking to see whether or not they are producing those ingredients in ways that are safe and you are using them. Now, having done an analysis and you have identified that there are certain hazards that require a preventive control, you must have a recall plan. And that plan basically talks about steps to notify persons who would have received those goods that the food is being recalled, and they can know how to return or dispose of the food that is affected. The public has to be notified about the hazards in the food. The recall plan must at a minimum also have someone responsible for conducting assessments of the effectiveness of checks. Are we getting back all of the foods that have been contaminated? in what quantities, are the total numbers of those that were distributed, those that would have been returned or destroyed. And certainly the recall plan speaks about appropriately disposing of products that would have been recalled. Again, for the US market, food facilities must meet what I want to call product requirements. So the FDA has Code of Federal Regulations, and these regulations stipulate requirements for certain types of products. For example, 21 CFR, Code of Federal Regulations 120, speaks the requirements for juices. For seafoods, that is covered by 21 CFR 123. And for persons who do acidified and low acid foods, regulations 113 and 114 are what would be applicable. 113 for low acid foods, and acidified foods are covered by 114. We've heard already from Mrs. Morgan and the reference made by Mrs. Ford about training. You must have qualified persons who are qualified to perform their assigned duties. They must be trained in the principles of food hygiene and food safety, and they must understand the principle of employee health and hygiene appropriate to the food that they're producing, the facility, and the duties that they are performing. And you must have training records. Mrs. Morgan mentioned preventive control qualified individuals. The FDA regulation mandates that your food safety plan that we just talked about must be prepared, or the plan is overseen by someone who is preventive controls qualified individual, PCQI trained. And this is a course that is recognized by the Food and Drug Administration, and the Food Safety Preventive Control Alliance develops courses like this on behalf of that meets rather the requirements and is recognized by the FDA. One of the other things I want to mention, and again, Gervon spoke about labels. Food facilities must meet the general and nutritional labeling requirements for the US market or for the market to which they intend to send their products. And the labeling requirements for the US market is contained in the Code of Federal Regulation, Part 21, Subpart 101. So for persons who are interested in exporting, certainly you can reach out to the Bureau of Standards through the Food Safety Modernization branch for the US market. And for other countries, there is the Regional and International Trade branch, and we can help you to get the information that you need about the market requirements. I also want to mention that there is a client services program offered by the BSJ where a bit of hand-holding is offered to you, our customers, and we are able to take you through the different steps to achieve whatever goals it is you want to achieve for your business. Some of these would have been mentioned before. The BSJ provides other services, testing and calibration, certification, as we heard from Mrs. Ford, quality institutes with training and interpreting and using the same standards that we would have been discussing earlier. The Bureau is here to meet those needs. So you want to send your food abroad, certainly you have to ensure that you know what the requirements for the particular markets are and you are meeting them. Because at the end of the day, the food safety issue will not just impact your company, but Jamaica in general and the countries to which the food is sent. Thank you so much for joining me as I speak a little bit about the perspective of exporting food. More information, please feel free to contact us, and we look forward to meeting with you and helping you to meet your goals. Thank you so much, Mr. Leng, for having me this morning to lend my voice to the talk about the importance of food safety.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Sachel Knight, and thanks to all of my other presenters, the other guests, the other participants in the program who joined us earlier and who certainly helped to advance the information that we want to share. As we wrap up this Information Hotspot News Network special program, we acknowledge Reggie Brooks, Lenworth Clark, Sonia Morgan, Gervon Spence, Navinia Wellington Ford, and Sharika Sachel Knight, who were all participants on our program today. Of course, the program could not have happened without the technical team. We have our producer, Maxine Fagan. We have our technical operator, our videographer, Orion Wallace, and we have production assistant Rochelle Brown. They have contributed significantly. And on the administrative leg, we have Saskia MacDonald and Faith McCoy, all contributing to the activity. The Information Hotspot Network special news broadcast comes to an end, but the session does not. Just please wait a second.
At the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, we're driving the growth of Jamaican businesses, large and small, developing standards to improve the quality of our products and services. Standards are essential to your business success, which is why Jamaica's brightest scientists, engineers, technicians, and standards development professionals are at work to give you the competitive edge, locally and internationally. We're here to help you meet the quality challenge. So if you're starting a business or expanding to the next level, think quality, think BSJ. Raise your standards and the world will meet you there. Get ready to succeed. The Bureau of Standards Jamaica, making standards work for you.
Friends of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, I trust that you're hearing me. Thank you for having joined us for this very special program that was presented to you just now as a scenario, a possible scenario that we would not wish for Jamaica. As food processors, we encourage you to utilize the various services, whether here at the Bureau of Standards Jamaica or through some of our colleague agencies. There's a Scientific Research Council that can assist the process. There's a Food Storage and Prevention of Infestation Division. There's a Public Health Department. There are several agencies that work together to ensure food safety. There are entities from the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, other arms. And so we say to all of you who are here as food processors, as well as, so in addition to these business support organizations, there are some of those groups, the Jamaica Manufacturers Exporters Association, the Jamaica Agricultural Processors Association. We have several groups that can assist. We here at the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, we stand ready to assist, to provide information, to provide opportunities for training, and we certainly have testing and calibration services that can help ensure the success of your business. We are just around the 2-hour mark. We acknowledge that persons may or may not have questions, which we will just try to facilitate in the next 6 minutes. So if there are any particular questions, concerns, or comments that persons would want to make, we will open it up now just to facilitate the discussion up to about 11:50. We started at 9:40, and we certainly appreciate your time with us, and we would not want to go beyond that. So are there any comments? I know some comments were responded to in the chat. Some information was also shared by some of our presenters, but if there are any questions, might I just invite you to use the raise hand feature to indicate, and we will acknowledge you. If not, we thank you certainly for your time, and we trust that this program has been beneficial to you. For those of you who attended, we will reach out to you via email, and we do ask that you respond to the brief survey that we will share during the course of today. Are there any questions? Are there any comments? If not, we wish for you healthy eating during the upcoming holiday season. We at the Bureau of Standards Jamaica will be working to ensure the safety of all of you. And so we acknowledge Lashanda Whitaker. Let me see if it's Whitaker. Yes, Lashanda Whitaker, please go ahead. Please unmute and speak.
Hello, good morning again, everyone. I just would like to be reminded, based on what Mr. Spence had shared, what is inert and active packaging. That's all.
All right, fine. Gervon, is Gervon on? Gervon, might I just ask you if you are on to respond? All right, Gervon is not on, we understand. So I'm going to ask one of the other presenters, one of the technical personnel, Rajiv, are you able to respond to that question for us as we seek to just confirm for Lashanda, sorry, the difference between the inert, inactive, to clarify for her as a processor.
Sorry, Sterling, this is Sharika.
Right,
Rajiv can jump in when he's able to. But just to say it, so Lashanda, what he was basically saying is that you have certain material that you use for your packaging. The idea is to make sure that the packaging is as such that when the food is placed in them, the food doesn't react or cause any reaction to occur with the packaging material. And so that is what inert is, or inactive. So the packaging material is made of materials that will not interact with or react with, cause any reactions to happen with the food that is contained in the package. And that is going to be important because these reactions can have different kinds of impact on the food itself, can cause certain reactions to occur, can cause a little bit later and prolonged existence in the package, can cause microbiological growth of undesired organisms or pathogens, as I would have been describing. And so you just want to ensure and the food can, the preservation of the food is going to be impacted as a result of that. You can have things like the flavor profile of the things changing, of the food changing, other quality parameters being affected by the kind of material that you're using. And so he's basically saying the packaging material should not cause that kind of an interaction with the product that is contained in it. So it has to be inert or inactive, so nothing is happening. I'm seeing where Mrs. Ford is saying sensory issues also, like off flavors can happen, and it can have food safety and quality issues. So that is what he was talking about. The packaging material must be able to interact with the food that is contained in it. I hope that brings some kind of a clarity.
Thank you very much. It does.
Great, thanks, Lashanda. And again, we acknowledge some persons who have just expressed appreciation in the chat, and just a reminder that the information, the technical information provided is in fact accurate and certainly can be utilized. The scenario that was presented is in fact a scenario. And so we just underscore that this is a scenario to demonstrate the impact that food safety breaches could have on our population. The recording will be uploaded to our website within a week, and you will be able to access the information that has been shared there today. Again, on behalf of the Communication and Customer Service Branch of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, on behalf of the Bureau of Standards Jamaica, I express appreciation to all of my colleagues who have participated, who have lent their expertise here today to ensure the engaging session that we have had. To all of you who have attended this morning, who have participated, we are truly grateful. Have a good afternoon.